Hello, everyone. Good day. This is Michelle. Welcome to today's webinar called Getting Started with OpenSearch and OpenSearch Dashboards. OpenSearch is a very known search engine. It's also an analytics suite. So that's why we're going to tackle two parts of what OpenSearch is. And I really believe that it's very interesting as a technology, and at Canonical, we've done a lot of good things on this project because we do believe that this project is thriving as an open source project, but at the same time, it is really needed by multiple enterprises all over the world. And for today, I have with me Mehdi, the engineering manager of Charmed OpenSearch. Hi, Mehdi.
Hi, Michelle.
How are you? And how are you? And how is it? Managing group of developers working on Charmed OpenSearch.
Well, I'm good. Thank you. I think what we do is pretty exciting. So we solve complex topics. So I think that this is a rather rewarding product that we're working on. OpenSearch on its own, with all of its very vibrant community, and as well as the product and the all the toolings and the software that we're building around it in the data platform team at Canonical. I think that the work has been very exciting and very rewarding.
Well, I'm very excited because in the latter part of the call, or this webinar, we will discuss more about these features and automation works that we've done at Canonical to, enrich OpenSearch and the OpenSearch project. Well, let's get started. Let's start with introducing to you the agenda for today, which is, of course, the getting started of OpenSearch, the search engine itself, a demo to quickly spin up an OpenSearch cluster and use it, for search. And then the second part is the OpenSearch Dashboards, which is the visualization tool to quickly spin up that and use that for different use cases such as observability or SIEM. And then let's have a quick discussion about the management of OpenSearch in production. We have a very interesting announcement for today, but let's hold that until the latter part of this call about the project that we've been doing here at Canonical and wrap it up with some learning. If you have any questions for this webinar, feel free to comment on the LinkedIn event or in the Bright Talk event, or you can keep in touch with us and send us any queries, and you can scan the QR code. Let's start with the first agenda, which is OpenSearch and the search engine. So what is actually OpenSearch? Well, it's a fully open source search and analytics suite. To give more context on what we can do with OpenSearch, of course, it's an enterprise search. If you wanted to have a hosted search in your organization, in your small project, if you have, big data collection and you needed to be able to search, query, retrieve information as quickly as possible, that's where OpenSearch is very good at and known for. It can also be used for observability and security analytics, where you can detect and respond security threats in real time. I'll give an example of it later. It can also be a vector database, and other OpenSearch extensions can be used to build your own LLM or retrieval augmented generation. I think it's a very good technology in this instance because if you just want to kickstart creating your own project, you literally just don't need different types of applications to work with. You have OpenSearch to help you with almost all the RAG services that you needed. And lastly, OpenSearch is a drop-in replacement of Elasticsearch. So it's a fork of Elastic 3 years ago. So, any use cases such as migration from Elastic to OpenSearch can also be tackled by this specific software. Yeah, I'm just very curious, Paddy, on these use cases and what OpenSearch can do. Um, what use case here you have an experience of, and can you tell me what did you do and how it became very useful for you?
Right. So, yeah, as you said, OpenSearch can wear many hats, right? So you can also just use it for simple website search, right? Or internal wikis for companies and corporates. You can also use it, and it is widely used also for log collections and analytics. So this is a use case that's pretty common nowadays, as well as monitoring, setting alerts, and detecting anomalies in those entries. Yeah, so I would say that in addition to what you said, it is pretty common to be used in website search and as well as logs collection and analysis and anomaly detection.
Yeah, I've seen a couple of projects done by the teams about it, and it's just pretty nice to see. Not just, with our beta users, but also with internally at Canonical and how it is being consumed and helpful for our organization. Well, as the OpenSearch is known as a search engine. It's based in Lucene. It can be used from e-commerce search, document search, application search, embedding search for enterprise and commercial applications. But the major features that it has is, of course, the lexical search tool that it has, which covers an access for full range functionality of specific text-based data. As I shared a while ago, document search is a good example of that. Vector search functionality. OpenSearch has KNN plugin that enables the usage of OpenSearch for use cases such as RAG, or retrieval augmented generation. Scalability. It really scales. If you wanted a hosted search in your company with a lot of data sets, it can really scale. And me and Mehdi will share more about the large deployment architecture later. And then lastly, extensibility, which covers a broad range of different solutions that build on top of the core of OpenSearch, so that search solution can improve over time. And we've seen that a lot with the KNN plugins and other plugins that OpenSearch has. So can you tell me more about the OpenSearch cluster architecture, Mehdi, and how to work with OpenSearch and the data that it processes based on clusters, nodes, and any other arrangements?
Right. So in general, so OpenSearch is a database search engine, data product, whatever terminology we use, that is heavily relying on roles, right? So nodes get assigned a certain set, one or multiple roles, and usually these roles are the ones that are dictating the behavior of such a node, right? So the cluster manager role is essentially assigned to a node that will serve as the effective brain of the cluster. And this will be used to track the cluster state, to basically anything orchestration related to tracking the nodes and so on and so forth. The data nodes are the nodes that are effectively storing data, shards, so indices, and the shard is the unit of storage of those indices, so primary shard, replica shards, and so on and so forth. So data nodes are the ones effectively serving as storage nodes. Now, in order for these shards to be located and found when performing a query from the user, this is where the coordinated node plays a role. And this is the node that is effectively routing requests to the right node. So either for search or either for write and so on. So this is the node that is locating the specific piece of data that should be the target of a query or a request and so on, and collects the results and returns them to the user. So this is internally to the OpenSearch cluster. Then outside of this, you may have the OpenSearch dashboards, which is effectively a fork of Kibana, right? So this is the data visualization, querying and so on tool that allows you to visualize or simply search, right? And be a client to your OpenSearch cluster.
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting architecture. People will always say that OpenSearch is really the best in terms of processing and storing big data, and because it's also a NoSQL database. But because of how it's actually structured, as you mentioned, you can have multiple data nodes, you can have, you can organize how many cluster managers you will have, and you will be able to also extend that to more nodes depending on what types of OpenSearch services you would like to use. You haven't even mentioned the others, such as machine learning nodes, etc. So I think it's a pretty powerful tool. And if you look at how it is structured, it might be really hard to kind of operate such a complex data architecture. And I think that's where I'm coming in now with the product or project that we've been working with at Canonical, which we call Charmed OpenSearch, which is actually an OpenSearch operator. Well, an OpenSearch operator is defined to be the business logic encapsulated in a reusable software packages that automates every aspect of an application's life, in this case, OpenSearch. So in a very, very short description, Mehdi, how would you compare the OpenSearch upstream from the Charmed OpenSearch, which is actually an operator?
Right. So I think we build on top of the OpenSearch upstream project, right? So OpenSearch upstream is the database itself, along with the wealth of plugin that it brings, and so on and so forth, right? So what we do in our operators, what we effectively build are, as the description clearly stated, is we try to compress all the best practices that we are aware of, all the operational knowledge of those databases, such as OpenSearch in this case, right, into code, so that end users do not need to worry about all the complexity of managing a large-scale OpenSearch cluster or other databases in general. But in this case, we focus on OpenSearch, right? But this is in fact to lower the entry bar of such of OpenSearch and allowing users to safely operate OpenSearch with high availability guarantees and all of that to prevent data losses or production mistakes and so on in very few simple commands. So the role of the Charmed of the OpenSearch operator is to effectively get all of this knowledge and best practices and automation into a very easily operable piece of software, which is the operator.
Thank you,
So
Mehdi. And we have
right. So at the end, we ship OpenSearch itself, right, with automated management and self-healing and yeah.
Yeah, I think we have an extensive list of that. Imagine, if something you have to do by your own, manually configure yourself manually, but if you actually have an operator that automates a lot of, work on behalf of you doing things by yourself, then it will definitely save you time, energy, and maybe resources if it's a full-blown large-scale deployment. Imagine 50 data nodes that you have to manage. That can be very daunting, let's say. So I think on the Charmed OpenSearch, what we have is we automated the deployment, the upgrades, backup and restore, the large deployment. We will discuss it in the next slide. basic user management, security such as TLS, observability, meaning in production, you wanted to know that, OpenSearch is running nicely and will not give you headache, that suddenly it stops working with predefined notifications and alerts. Plug-in management, I mentioned some machine learning extensions that OpenSearch has. OpenSearch Dashboards for data visualization, we will deep dive later. And of course, the whole mechanisms to make sure that you can actually security patch OpenSearch or fix the bug in the code base and, something happens, the critical vulnerability exposure. And all of these were automated. Later, Mehdi will show a couple of those sample and how things are automated, example, the deployment of OpenSearch. But we'll go to the large architecture of OpenSearch, which I think is a very good thing to highlight with what Charmed OpenSearch and what we've implemented in terms of automation is. But before we deep dive to this architecture, Mehdi, can you tell us more about the upstream design of large architecture and what we made with Charmed OpenSearch to make it, simpler to handle?
Right. So in large deployments and large-scale deployments, so OpenSearch itself does support that and has a very big extensibility power in general. So I guess the value added of our work is essentially to make it simpler to operate. So meaning to sort of abstract the whole orchestration part of a rather big fleet to also encourage isolation and perhaps also save costs. So what we essentially propose is instead of operating at a node level during a deployment, so say you want, for example, a machine learning, a couple of machine learning nodes, a couple of ingestion pipeline nodes, a couple of search nodes, and so on and so forth. So the way we see this is we see those as units. So we would see, for example, the machine learning nodes as a single unit of deployment and a single unit, therefore, of management and operation. So this is the idea that we went with. So we essentially divided a large deployment into a collection of deployment units where each deployment unit is a set of nodes. Right. So this is the approach that we went with, and this effectively simplifies the whole management chain of OpenSearch at large scale. It also isolates certain applications. So as an organization, you may want to not give access to this particular set of nodes, and this would be possible assuming that you have a completely isolated application for these nodes. So our design is effectively making multiple clusters form a bigger cluster, right? So for an application or a massive deployment, we would, for example, have the main orchestrator, and the main orchestrator would be a cluster with 3 nodes of cluster manager eligible nodes, right? And we could, for further high availability reasons, deploy in another region a failover orchestrator in case the entire main orchestrator cluster goes down, right? And you would give to that unit of deployment, which is again a set of nodes, the cluster manager role. So then you could, again, depending on your data architecture, so hot, warm, frozen, cold, and so on and so forth, you could have another cluster full of data hot nodes, right? Another one for cold, another one for ML, different region, different clouds, and different environments in general. Now, the way we do things so that they effectively form a fleet, a bigger cluster, so a lot of subclusters connected to each other. So we do that through Juju integrations, right? So the main orchestrator is there as an initial deployment unit. It's right there. It started and so on. And now it is effectively accepting integrations. So you would be deploying a failover orchestrator somewhere in another region and simply integrate it to the main orchestrator. As soon as this integration happens, we automatically ensure that all of the nodes of the failover joined the initial cluster. The same goes for data hot, data cold, and so on and so forth. So at the end of the day, as soon as you completed your integrations, you completed a large deployment. And you can work on pieces of this large deployment independently from the rest of the fleet. So if you had maintenance operations to perform on the machine learning subcluster, you can do so without effectively affecting the rest of the cluster or introducing risks of mistakes and so on and so forth. Then the whole collective of cluster obviously is observable, right? So this whole cluster fleet, this whole large deployments comes with Grafana dashboards, metrics on Prometheus, and so on and so forth that we also provide, right? So we deploy a whole observability stack that collects all of these metrics and that effectively monitors the whole cluster. The same goes for TLS. So TLS for us in OpenSearch, in Charmed OpenSearch at Canonical is a first-class citizen. So our operator does not function without TLS. So this is a must. And every subcluster of this fleet will effectively has TLS handled automatically with yet another relation or integration to the TLS operator.
I think it's really amazing when you got to talk about large scale deployment of OpenSearch, which is actually what it is made of and what it is made for. And to be able to understand how we can further automate, not just for the deployment, but allocations of different clusters and making sure that there's isolations, there's way to do still backup and restore, there's still way to do upgrades for those. And because we do understand that with this setup, you should be able to also deploy it, whether you're in a private cloud or in different public clouds and in different setups. So it's pretty amazing.
Right, and you can also you can also scale down up units basically of each of these components. So and this effectively also has an impact on costs. So on costs. So if a specific cloud had cheaper compute for specific types of workloads, for example, say for GPU, you may want to have your machine learning subcluster deployed over there, whereas the rest of the compute is rather cheaper in this particular cloud, and so on and so forth, or in your own private data center. And for you, it doesn't really make a difference for the whole since you operate these things as their own separate units, which you scale down, scale up, without effectively impacting the rest. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Mehdi. And of course, aside from the large architecture, you can also deploy Charmed OpenSearch in a simpler way of deployment, where you can co-locate both data nodes and also your cluster manager node in similar, VM or a physical machine, which I think is quite good because we know that sometimes it's pre-allocated in other cloud services depending on how you designed or how they designed the deployment of a simple deployment for OpenSearch or Elasticsearch in this instance. Well, that's I think you have highlighted with the Charmed OpenSearch, and that's the reason why we wanted to show how to finally get started with Charmed OpenSearch and get a full-on benefit from all the automations and features that it can give to you to kind of simplify the way you handle OpenSearch in production. So there's a lot of prerequisite, and I'm encouraging you to please scan the tutorial. For Charmed OpenSearch, you need to make sure you're an experience in Linux-based CLI. You will actually deploy it in an Ubuntu machine. You should be familiar with OpenSearch concepts. and you have to fulfill a couple of minimum system requirements. But if it's just for a fun deployment, you don't need to worry about so much about, having terabytes of, storage, etc. You can just do it by your own in your machine. And yes, and Mehdi will run us through with a demo from, making sure that you can deploy OpenSearch and you can actually perform a search action. But before that, there are a couple of other prerequisites, which is you have to set up your machine. You have to set up Juju, which is technically the control plane and the orchestrator that you will be needing, and a couple of kernel parameters. All of these is in the tutorial. And now I'll turn it over for Mehdi to showcase how to deploy OpenSearch and to perform a search action, how fast it is to actually use Charmed OpenSearch.
This demo assumes an already existing Juju setup and installation. For the purpose of the demo, we chose the substrate LXD, so where we picked a machine, and we will be deploying multiple OpenSearch LXD containers in it. But you can really choose any type of substrate, being AWS EC2, Azure virtual machines, and so on and so forth. So we verify our Juju installations. We check on the models, which are logical spaces, so logical groups of resources and applications. We have none, so we add the dev model, and this is where we will be deploying our OpenSearch machines. So we deployed the OpenSearch charm, and we'll set 3 units, and based on the edge channel of the charm. So this charm can be found on Charm Hub io/OpenSearch. Then we deploy the self-signed certificates operator, which is a TLS provider for certificates, because Charmed OpenSearch has a strong dependency on TLS providers, and this is one of the preconditions for a good OpenSearch deployment. Then, as you see on top, OpenSearch got installed, and there is a missing TLS relation with this cluster error, and this means that we need to integrate the self-signed certificates operator or the TLS provider with OpenSearch. So as soon as these two are integrated, there is automatically an issuing of certificates that OpenSearch uses internally to be configured, and then kickstarts the start routine, which happens on a rolling fashion, so one node at a time. All the 3 nodes have started. So what we want to do now is take a look at the OpenSearch API. So we we fetch the password, the admin user password, and this is an admin user to interact with the OpenSearch with full cluster privileges, and we use it for testing. So we will be using this to query the nodes of the cluster and sort of see and confirm that indeed the 3 nodes that we see on the Juju status output are up and running and with the right configuration. So as we see a match in OpenSearch 0, 1, and 2 matching the Juju status output. So our nodes are up and running. Now we want to ingest some data and 2 indices, blogs and web traffic. And we would like to attempt to perform a search query against the blogs index. So we run and confirm that indeed those 2 indices were created. And as you can see, blogs and web traffic are there. So now we can perform a search request. And as you see, we have results, return documents from the search query. So to summarize what we did in this part, we deployed Charmed OpenSearch. the self-signed certificates operator, though we could have used the manual TLS operator where we settle on CA and so on. But for the sake of the demo, we deployed Charmed OpenSearch self-signed certificates operator and witnessed cluster up and running, ready to receive data and also able to serve search.
Thank you, Mehdi, for that demo. It's really fast, and really appreciate the work that our team has done. Yes, we just highlighted the deployment piece of it, and that you can actually use OpenSearch for search purposes. But there's other tutorials that we can show to our audience on how to do backup and restore, how to do upgrades, how to operate large-scale deployments. And that was in the QR code I shared in the previous slides. Now we proceed with OpenSearch Dashboards. It's another component of OpenSearch, and of course, the analytics suite that it gives. So it's a web-based user interface that allows you to interact and visualize data that is stored in an OpenSearch cluster. And you can see that it serves as the front-end application of the engine itself. And I believe later, Mehdi will demo as well a way to showcase search results and visualize it in a specific format. So this is how OpenSearch dashboard looks like when you get started. It's used for, of course, data visualization. You can use for bar charts, heat maps, etc., depending on your use case. You can do querying and filtering of information by using different Lucene query syntax. If you have near real-time use cases, you can do real-time monitoring as well. You can manage indexes based on your use case. And you can be notified any alerts and notifications. Let's say, you get notified in your email, Slack, etc. It can be set up too. And OpenSearch dashboard is very, very useful and helpful, especially when you're doing log and metrics analysis. You have huge chunks of logs, as I think Mehdi mentioned a while ago. You wanted to analyze that. You use it for DevOps, security monitoring, business analytics, for example, and operational dashboard. I'll give a concrete example with the OpenSearch dashboard here, where it is used to understand DDoS attacks. So you can get an insight. So for example, if machine is getting flooded by a specific UDP packet, for traffic optimization, you can detect packet storms due to internal technical issues and see why things are not optimized, and make some, intellectual decisions and understanding where it is coming from, which is also related to the service abuse detection. So in this case, you can see in the sample where we showed that specifically for the service abuse detection. And so you can see what is the bandwidth of, networks that is coming into your system or in your setup, and understand how big it is, and does it make sense that it's pulling out specific, gigabytes of storage out of your server. And we have seen this, especially with our users of Charmed OpenSearch, and has built use cases on top of it. So that's one use case for security analytics. And now we go on how easy it is to deploy OpenSearch dashboards. And we actually also made an operator for it called the Charmed OpenSearch dashboard. Would you like to share more about the prerequisite, the setup needs to be done? I think it's similar a while ago, Mehdi, with the search engine. And can you share us the setup? Is there any difference on the hardware requirements, for example?
I would say that the setup of the dashboards operator is rather simpler. than the one of OpenSearch itself, right? So, for example, OpenSearch requires, we do strongly encourage users to at least deploy 3+ nodes to ensure high availability and so on and so forth. Whereas the dashboard can be deployed as a single unit. OpenSearch itself can still be deployed as a single unit, though do not absolutely not recommend users to do so. The dashboard is a rather simple but also extensible operator. So we also have a group and a set of self-healing operations that we do automatically to ensure that the dashboard stays operational under various scenarios, such as, for example, IP change and those kind of things. So we ensure that the service stays operational, revives itself, and so on and so forth. We also have TLS optional in the dashboard for users who may or may not need to use it along with TLS. So yeah, I would say as far as the requirements go, the dashboard is rather more flexible than it is with OpenSearch. For example, we do not require kernel sysctl kernel parameters to be set on the machine. Yeah, and I would say it's a fairly easy deployment at the end, as I mentioned earlier, with integrations. So the way it goes is that we deploy the dashboards. We have an existing deployment of OpenSearch operator, and then we integrate the dashboard with the operator. So it's a matter of a single command. Yeah.
Thanks, Mehdi. And I think, again, for this specific tutorial or demo, we recommend the prerequisite and you set up the environment so that you can just deploy OpenSearch dashboard using our operator. And then Mehdi will show the use of OpenSearch dashboard to query and visualize your data.
On the second part of the demo, we'll be focusing on the OpenSearch dashboards and showcase how to deploy it and how to also integrate it and make OpenSearch ready for consumption from the OpenSearch dashboards set. So similar to OpenSearch, we deploy the OpenSearch dashboards Charm through Juju. And in this case, we will simply deploy a single unit. We will also be deploying a special charm, which is the data integrator charm, to provide us with credentials for the said dashboard. So for the purpose of the demo, we will be a bit generous in the roles that we give to the access. So we'll just go with full cluster administrative roles so that the OpenSearch dashboard is able to query all the indices of the cluster. Now these two charms are deploying and effectively allocating resources. And as you see, there is an OpenSearch connection is missing next to the OpenSearch dashboards. And this means that we are yet to integrate the OpenSearch dashboards with the actual OpenSearch charm. And this is what we're currently doing. As soon as the both are integrated, the OpenSearch dashboards receives credentials to interact with the OpenSearch charm and configures itself. Now here it's valid to say that the OpenSearch dashboards charm supports functioning with or without TLS, but to stay consistent, we can also set up TLS for HTTP on the OpenSearch dashboards, and this is what we're doing. So similar to OpenSearch, we integrate the self-signed certificates operator with the dashboards. And as you see, we have the dashboards that's up and running. So now how to authenticate with the dashboard, right? So as you see, there is a blocked message. Please relate the data integrator with the desired products. And this is exactly what we'll be doing. And this will effectively give us credentials to authenticate on the dashboard. Now we can fetch those credentials from the data integrator Charm, which is named as admin. So this is the alias I gave it. So we run an action, little typo there. Get credentials. So we run the get credentials action against the unit admin 0, right? This will give us two things. The name of the user, which is OpenSearch client minus _10. And this is the username and the password of this user. And those are credentials that we will copy and use to authenticate against the OpenSearch dashboards. So as you see, OpenSearch client _10 and the password that we copy pasted, that we copied from the data integrator get credential action. Now we can use it to authenticate to the dashboard. This is the first time we opened the dashboard. So starting from here, we are able to see indices, web traffic, blogs, tests, and so on. And we are also able to create index patterns, which is exactly what we'll be doing now. So we will be creating two index patterns, one for the blogs index and one for the web traffic index, which will then use to be able to query data and visualize data later on. This was for the blogs index. We do the same for the web traffic index. Now we should be able to visualize and query the data. Let's broaden the search range. And as you see, we already see the index data that we ingested in the first step of the demo. We can also change indices and see different results.
So thank you, Mehdi, for the demo for both OpenSearch engine, search engine, and the OpenSearch dashboard. And I think we have to consider that if we wanted to run OpenSearch in production, there are a lot of best practices or production scenario that you might bump in. An example of that are these. There are 7 points here: the data breach, data corruption, system failures, scalability issues, upgrades, challenges, maybe skill gaps, and configuration complexity. And with these challenges, it has to have a specific best practice, such as for data breach, you have to do database security. And I think, Mehdi, you have shared that Charmed OpenSearch, for example, has some sort of TLS implementation as a first-class citizen, which I think is very good, because you wanted to make sure that everything is secure in terms of the network and when data is moving. Data corruption, backup and recovery. Would you like to give me more information about the importance of backup and recovery and how Charmed OpenSearch addresses this issue?
Right. So in any data system, usually backup and restores are very and fairly widely used features, and should I say also frequently used features, right? So this is no different in Charmed OpenSearch. So OpenSearch upstream has a fairly simple and very straightforward and clean way of doing backups and restores and so on. So what we effectively add on top of that is additional safety measures and also automating the whole integration with S3 buckets, GCP buckets, and Azure, and so on and so forth. Basically, any S3 compatible storage can potentially make use of our Charm for this particular feature.
Yeah, thanks, Mehdi. And aside from backup and recovery, when you have system failure, of course, you wanted to do monitoring and alerting. And, it's important that you have an observability tool that can show if your OpenSearch is working or not, and you get alerted. That is very important. Scalability, high availability, and scalability that we've shown with the large deployment architecture. Upgrades are really, really important, and the best practices to make sure that everything works well if we move from one version to the other. Skills gap, of course, it can be done through education and outsourcing. But what if you actually have a specific tool that automates things for you and help your team focus more on creating value out of OpenSearch rather than, fixing issues on OpenSearch? And lastly, the configuration complexity and through automations and how to put, things that makes it easier. So from deploying OpenSearch that will take you a few minutes to what Mehdi just did, it's just very important that you have those covered, and you kind of think of if software can do that for you, why not, right? So I think that's what makes Operator and what we did on the Charmed OpenSearch really, really compelling. So now we'll go to the announcement, actually, at Canonical. The community has known that we've been working on the OpenSearch Operator for a while now. And now we wanted to announce, together with Mehdi, that Charmed OpenSearch goes generally available today. And what is it? It's actually the enterprise solution for secure and automate the deployment, maintenance, upgrades of OpenSearch across private and public cloud. At Canonical, you can talk to us if you need security maintenance for your OpenSearch. You need support, someone to talk to if you have any problem on, managing it. We have automations and the managed services that we offer for you. And lastly, if you wanted to hear more on how to move to Charmed OpenSearch from a specific technology stack to setting up your own LLM because you needed some sort of vector databases such as OpenSearch, or, wanted to learn more how OpenSearch can help for your data and AI needs, you can also talk to us about this. And we're just very happy to announce it to you. Mehdi, after working for many years on Charmed OpenSearch, how do you feel about fully announcing it's generally available?
Well, I mean, I'm very excited and proud of the work that we did. So I initially joined Canonical, and the first project I started working on as a software engineer was, in fact, Charmed OpenSearch. So this is a product that is very close and dear to me. So I'm very excited, and I also see how far the team went in developing this product. So I'm very excited and very happy to announce the first GA version of this Charm. Obviously, we have big plans for it, and yeah, so that makes me very happy.
Thank you, Mehdi and the team, for all the contribution. And the good news is the operator itself and whatever we did remains open source. So something that we are really, really proud of. And to give you more context about Charmed OpenSearch, I'll give you 2 minutes video introduction about it.
As a data leader, search engines and analytics tooling play a vital role in your decision-making. They are essential for measuring performance and driving operational efficiency. OpenSearch is a comprehensive search engine and analytics suite solution. It's used by thousands of organizations worldwide for a wealth of use cases ranging from security information and event management, hosted search, observability, to generative AI. Working with huge amounts of data and big data infrastructure can be challenging. What's more, automating the deployment, provisioning, management, and orchestration of production data clusters can be highly complex. But what if there was an easier way to get more out of OpenSearch? Enter Charmed OpenSearch, an enterprise OpenSearch solution. Canonical's Charmed OpenSearch helps you automate operational tasks and spend more time on value-driving data and analytics projects. It is your hyper-automated OpenSearch that makes it possible to run a seamless and high-performance application on any cloud of your choice. Charmed OpenSearch offers a variety of features and plugins to help you index, secure, monitor, and analyze your data. It also provides secure database management and security patching for 10 years. OpenSearch's distributed system design can scale out horizontally, giving you high availability and scalability. Built-in observability features make it easy to monitor and set alerts for your application's operations. It also includes full support for OpenSearch Dashboards, which are ideal for analytics use cases. Need experts on call to provide support? Canonical's team is here to help. Get started with Charmed OpenSearch at www.canonical.com/data/OpenSearch.
That's super exciting. And yes, I'm very excited to announce that together with you, Mehdi. We've been working hard on this at Canonical, and we do really believe that enterprise can make use of it, whether you wanted to use Charmed OpenSearch for your own self-managed application, just try it out. Or, you're an enterprise who need a fully supported security patch, maintained enterprise OpenSearch. You can also call us. Let's keep in touch if you have any needs, or a managed solution service. But yeah, in general, we're very proud of this project, and I'm really happy you joined me here, Mehdi, to announce it. Any parting words before we close and say goodbye to
Yeah, so it's been very fun working on this project for the past a bit over 2 years, right? So yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks for everyone who attended and was watching this.
Thank you so much, and goodbye, everyone.